It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with Chief Conversationalist Thomas Senna. Featuring Matt Ardill. And special guest, Bill Kenny. And now, curator of the hall, JD.
Thank you, Doug Nance. My name falls off a cliff. And now, JD. Oh, welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. My name is JD, and it is great to be here with you all. I am just fumbling with my keys to get into the Hall of Fame. While I'm doing that, I will wipe my feet. Do the same, would you? Come on in as we prepare to go to a conversation with our friend Thomas Senna, and our equally good friend Bill Kenny is back to join us, and they are here to discuss Danny DeVito. Now, before we go any further, I want to just make sure everyone is aware of our new email address. It is the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. That's correct. I chose the maximum number of letters I could choose for the prefix. The SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. It might seem trivial to you, but we love to hear from you. So send us those emails, review the pod, and for heaven's sake, listen to the SNL Water Cooler. It's our brand new show on the SNL Hall of Fame. And we have Sherry Fesco and Joe Gannon joining me once a week to discuss the week that was in the SNL Hall of Fame. And we touch upon the current episode of SNL as well, where we identify the Hall of Shame and the Hall of Fame moments of that particular episode. I am out of breath because I have been racing down the hall to catch up with our friend Matt Ardill, and we should probably do that. So I'm going to make a confession here. Even though the show has been on for coming up to 20 seasons, and this gentleman has been on most of those seasons, I haven't seen a single flippin' episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And this week we're talking about one of its actors, and somebody who's got a long resume dating back to Taxi, at least. I'm sure there's more before that. But let's go to our friend Matt Ardill and learn some more about this week's nominee, Danny DeVito.
Hey, JD, thanks. I am shocked. You can't jump in with a Nightman episode. That would just be too much of a system shock. But if you ever have the chance, it is dark, but it is funny. So okay. I highly recommend Always Sunny. But yeah, so I'm looking forward. Danny is a great actor. 4'10", born November 17th, 1944, who shares the birthday with Lorne Michaels. So same birthday. So he's born in Neptune, New Jersey, grew up in a family of 5 and was raised in Ashbury Park, New Jersey. He would frequently eat at Jersey Mike's, which he grew up just down the street from the first location, which is why in 2022, he became the spokesperson for the subway chain Jersey Mike's. Oh. He just loved it, and Danny is a person who follows his passions. He was sent to boarding school to keep him out of trouble. He graduated in 1962 and then took a job at his older sister's beautician salon. She paid for him to get his beautician certification, which led to him getting a certificate in makeup at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. But to get that, the teacher said he had to sign up because she couldn't just teach him on the side. He had to be a student of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So he signed up and found his passion for acting after only a single semester at the school. Wildly enough, one of his sister's partners at the hair salon was a relative of a future colleague of his, Jack Nicholson, with whom he performed on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That's right.
This eventually became a prolific career, including 154 acting credits, 49 producer credits, 23 director credits, 16 soundtrack credits, and 4 writing credits. I mean, how can we forget his performance of Troll Toll in the Dayman musical on Always Sunny? I mean, it's the weirdest one of his experience, his performances. But I do have to say, I was shocked to also see that he performed Put Down the Ducky on the Sesame Street Put Down the Ducky TV movie. His range is truly epic in scope. Now, after starting as an actor, he actually shared a small apartment with Michael Douglas, and they remain friends to this day. During his time in New York, he actually met his now estranged wife, Rhea Perlman, in the off-Broadway play The Shrinking Bride. They then went on to get a grant from the American Film Institute together and write and produce Minestrone, a short film in 1975, which screened at Cannes and has since been translated into 5 languages. He was the original casting choice for Mario in the 1993 Super Mario's movie, dropping out, I'm guessing, after seeing the script, condemning Bob Hoskins to infamy. Now, this is another one of those, like, I'm kind of glad they didn't make this choice, because I don't think it would have worked, but he was almost George Costanza.
What?
He was in consideration for the role of George Costanza. It wouldn't have worked. It's the wrong energy, but it would have been wild to see.
Yeah.
Now he has been nominated for Best Picture for Erin Brockovich, along with noms for Batman Returns, American Comedy Writing Awards, Berlin International Film Festival Awards, Blockbuster Entertainment Awards, BAFTAs, Cable Ace, Emmys, and more. He is so award nominated, it's hard to keep track, but one of his earliest big wins was a 1981 Emmy for Taxi, which was revolved around buying a pair of pants, about how he was so short and so round he had to go to the Husky Boys section to get pants as an adult. And that was the plot in a Taxi episode. That won him his first Emmy. He commits, like during his time as the Penguin, in those scenes where you see him like noshing on raw fish, that is actual raw fish that he is just tearing into, not fake fish. He is very famous on social media for his troll foot pictures, where he will travel around the world and just take pictures of his great old big troll feet. And in fact, he is such a fan of limoncello, he has actually opened his own limoncello manufacturing plant, simply named Limoncello by Danny DeVito.
Well, short and sweet, I suppose.
Yeah.
You might say. Of course, you might not say as well. There's both options on the table. So let's get right to Thomas and our friend Bill Kinney as they continue to talk about Danny DeVito. Take it away, Thomas.
All right, JD and Matt, thank you so much for that. Hello and welcome to the conversation portion of this episode of the SNL Hall of Fame, Season 6, and we are rolling in this season. It's been a really good one, talking about lots of great hosts, cast members, musical guests, etc. Today we're dipping into the host category, a 6-timer. It depends. Well, I'll ask Bill about this. But yeah, so there's maybe a little caveat to this, but he's at least a 5-timer. We consider him a 6-timer. It's Danny DeVito today on the SNL Hall of Fame. And with that, of course, Bill Kenny, just amazing SNL knowledge with the Saturday Night Network, a man who mingles with the stars, with Dan Aykroyd and Jim Belushi. So he kind of stepped down in weight class a little bit, and he's appearing with me here on the SNL Hall of Fame. Bill, thanks for joining me.
Thomas, thank you for having me back. This is always such a good time. Listen, I mean, you're a celebrity in your own right, so let's not, bury the lead here. Like, Dan Aykroyd is fine, but the conversation's going to be great with this, and always a good time to talk to you.
I appreciate that, man. So you've done a host before, Martin Short. We had such a blast with that Marty Short episode, and I know you're a Danny DeVito fan, so I had to ask you. He's one of the names that I threw out, and you jumped on Danny right away. So before we get started in that, I'm curious, what's going on over at the Saturday Night Network? We just started celebrating season 50 of Saturday Night Live, a couple episodes into it. What's going on there as far as continuing the celebration here?
Yeah, if you haven't checked us out in a while, please do so. We have, during show weeks, we have a lot of great content from our Hot Take show, which is on right after SNL on Saturday night at 1:10 a.m. We also have our roundtables, which dive deeper into the sketches, and then By the Numbers is every Wednesday, and we talk about the statistics, which is where we made our bones at the beginning of our podcast. So, and then, of course, there's lots of other content we do in off weeks. During the summer, we just did the greatest host countdown of all time. Thomas, you joined us for one of the last episodes of that. We had a lot of fun breaking that down, and I think that's where the Danny DeVito stuff started, right? Because he was on the very first episode of the host countdown that we did, and we all agreed that it was way too low, and I can't wait to talk about that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I heard how much love you had for Danny and his hosting gigs and stuff. So I had to kind of throw his name out there for you in the off season. So I love the stuff that you do in the off weeks, in the off season. That's where all of us dorks can roll up our sleeves and get into brass tacks about SNL. So I love that you guys do different drafts. There's different neat concept shows. That's when the dorks thrive, Bill.
Oh, without a doubt. That's when we've had a lot of great stuff like SNL Stories, which we talked to alumni. You kind of referenced Dan Aykroyd. We did a Blues Brothers. We went to a Blues Brothers convention, James Stevens and I, another podcaster, and we got to talk to Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd there. So that was a lot of fun. But we've talked to Mary Gross and Gary Kroger, a whole host of people who have had some association with SNL through the years. So that's always a lot of fun, too. So check that out as well. And then, of course, everything you need to know about SNL. And this will be the final plug, Thomas. We don't want to bog it down too much. But John and James have been doing that every week. And it's kind of these 15-minute mini episodes of kind of a starter's guide to SNL, starting with season 1, going through. So if you don't have the time, like Thomas and I do, to sit through 30 episodes of SNL in a week, you can go watch this for 15 minutes and kind of satiate your thirst for SNL.
Now, recently, John was a guest of mine and Jeremy's on our other podcast, Pop Culture 5. We did 6 essential SNL sketches, and I was telling John the everything you need to know about SNL. Those videos that's some of my favorite content on YouTube. Just in general, the editing's immaculate. The content is great. It looks great. It sounds great. It's just that's one of my favorite things on YouTube that I look forward to.
Yeah, without a doubt. And even people like us who know so much about SNL, it's still good to go back and be able to watch these and remember what season was that in. Oh yeah, that's right. So it kind of gives you, jumpstart your brain as far as SNL.
If you're not doing it already, make sure to check out all the great content they have over at the Saturday Night Network. Today, we're going to get into Danny DeVito as a host. So a little brief background. Danny did a lot of acting throughout the 70s, mostly playing bit parts. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A decent amount of screen time. He basically said nothing in that movie, but he was just kind of there smiling and grinning while Jack Nicholson did his thing. He got his big break, though, starring in Taxi from 1978 to 1983. Bill, how did you become acquainted with the peculiar and unique person that is Danny DeVito?
Definitely Taxi. And there was a different time back then where we would watch more mature shows like Taxi as kids because we only had 3 channels. But it was on this killer Tuesday night ABC lineup with Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and shows like that. And it was, if you've liked Cheers, it's kind of the Cheers that people have forgotten about. It was set in this cab company in New York, and Danny played this very kind of volatile role, scoundrel with a heart of gold as the years went on and you got to see. But that was where I met him, and it's still a great show. It's something I like to go back and watch every now and then, and it still holds up after all these years. It's a stellar ensemble.
Yeah, it's one that I keep meaning to go back and try to rewatch. I used to catch episodes every now and then on Nick at Night. And then maybe MASH would come on or something. I hear the music, and then that was time for me to go to sleep. But I would catch like Taxi sometimes on Nick at Night. Probably for me, watching like Twins, Throw Mama from the Train, kind of things of that nature. I really started appreciating Danny and his quirks, and he had this presence about him that far exceeded his stature. You know what I'm saying? So the way he was able to command the screen. He was almost like a Joe Pesci in a way, even though Danny maybe was less menacing, but he was still that like kind of intense guy who would just take over the screen, I think, Bill.
Yeah, I wonder how people view him, younger people view him today, because, he was a legitimate movie star. You mentioned some of them. From starting around 84, 85, he's in a hit almost every year for the next 10 years, Romancing the Stone, War of the Roses, gets into the 90s, and he's in Hoffa and Batman Returns, gets Shorty. So there's always something going on with Danny. He compensates his short stature with just a commanding performance no matter what he's in.
Well, I'm really happy. I think a lot of the younger folks still watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So they really enjoy Danny DeVito from that. So it's funny to talk to, my niece is a big It's Always Sunny fan. And so it's funny, I tell her, have you seen Danny in this? Have you watched this? Have you seen his SNL hosting gigs? You need to go check out Danny, pre It's Always Sunny. But I'm glad that the younger generation is getting a little taste of DeVito on It's Always Sunny. Is that something that you've checked out, Bill?
Oh one of my favorite shows outside of SNL. Yeah, still, that's something that if I just need to have something on in the background, I'm going to Always Sunny and throwing on an episode because it's been on for 18 years at this point, almost 19 years.
Yeah.
And it still holds up. It really, it's the Dirtier Friends or Seinfeld or however you want to look at it. People with no soul who just kind of found each other in this crazy world and don't give a shit what they do to anybody else. And Danny is a huge part of that. He probably saved that show because he wasn't in the first season of that and was able to kind of boost it up and make it what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely wouldn't be around without Danny. I think the other core guys like Rob and Glenn and Charlie and them, Caitlin, would tell you that Danny probably saved the show. So I'm really just happy that the younger folks, some of whom probably shouldn't be watching It's Always Sunny, but be that as it may, that they get to appreciate Danny. We've talked about, obviously, some of his trademarks, like his stature, his offbeat personality. One thing, especially watching these episodes, and it relates back to something that I've noticed or talked about with other hosts who I consider great, is that Danny's a really good actor. And that serves him well in committing to these sketches like we just talked about on the SNN host countdown and on the SNL Hall of Fame, Adam Driver, who's a good actor, and that serves him well. Danny, I think, like I said, his stature, his kind of weird personality, sometimes I think that kind of overshadows that he's a good actor, Bill, and it serves him well in these sketches.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see when he came into SNL. You can say a lot about the Ebersol years that didn't work. I think one of the things that definitely did work is that he found hosts that were kind of outside the box. There was no reason in 1982 to bring a Danny DeVito into the show. Now, this predates most of his movies. He is on Taxi, of course, but he's the third or fourth or fifth lead on that show. But Ebersol saw something in him and decided to bring him in. It's one of those seasons in season 7 where we get so many unique. We get the Smothers Brothers. We get Olivia Newton-John right after this, which is kind of outside of normal thinking as well. And so he just kind of fits into this one of the wackiest seasons of SNL we've ever had.
Yeah.
And he meshes immediately with the people he's working with. They feel comfortable putting him in recurring sketches immediately and some original pieces as well. So right out of the gate, we get to see what Danny can do.
Yeah, so he first appeared season 7 toward the end, episode 19. That was in May of 1982. Interesting timing, and I think it's kind of funny. I almost wonder if Ebersol and NBC brought him on as like maybe to rag on ABC a little bit of a friendly competition there, because Taxi had just been canceled, Bill, and that was what his monologue was all about. Taxi having been canceled by ABC.
This afternoon, my little immigrant Italian mother, she gave me this letter. She said to me, Danny, I want you to read this on the national TV. Son, you have been besmirched by men so shallow that they do not know the depths to which their deeds have taken them.
And funny enough, about a month after this aired, NBC picked up Taxi for one final season. So that's the funny side of it. But I find this monologue fascinating because, I can't think of another monologue in the history of the show that's like this. It's very, very unique. So he, as you say, they're kind of giving a swan song to Taxi, and he brings out the entire cast. Now, we've seen cameos when TV stars have hosted before. The most recent I can think of is like Steve Carell bringing in Jenna Fisher and a couple other people from The Office. But to have the entire cast of a show from another network and come on to the stage to kind of take their final bow. And it's the only time in the history of the show that we see Judd Hirsch, Mary Lou Henner, Christopher Lloyd. Like, these are big names. These are people who go on to do a lot of different things, and they never appear on SNL at any other point. So that is very, very intriguing to me, that they gave Danny the freedom to do this and find a way to make this one of the most unique monologues in the history of the show.
Yeah, it totally is. And just seeing like who they would become, like people still know Judd Hirsch. He just recently appeared in the Fabelmans and like not too long ago. Christopher Lloyd, obviously, who would go on to do Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit after that. Tony Danza. So Tony Danza did host SNL.
Tony Danza does come back and host, so a couple times.
Yeah.
But he's really the only one.
He's the only one. Andy Kaufman comes out in his neck brace. He's still in the middle of the whole wrestling Jerry Lawler thing, so he has to come out sporting the neck brace, kind of keep kayfabe alive there. But this was neat. I love Danny's calling out like ABC, the American Broadcasting Corporation, is the one who canceled us. And I'm sure NBC had, if they didn't already had signed the contracts, they had ideas probably of like, we're bringing in Taxi into the family, so let's do this. No, I agree. It was just so cool to see all those people on stage. Mary Lou Henner. It's just so cool to see all those people on stage. I enjoyed it. It was simple, but I enjoyed getting to know Danny and seeing the rest of the cast of Taxi.
Yeah, exactly. And it was such a great segue into the next piece where you get to see this pre-tape with the opening credits to Taxi, basically, until it cuts to Danny getting out of the taxi, looking at the building, the ABC building, and kind of mulling in his mind. Now, this is not something after 9/11 we would ever see again, I'm sure.
Right.
But at the time, it was very, very humorous and still very funny if you can look at it in the frame of where it's at. And he's mulling what he should do and then decides to blow up ABC and drives away. Like, are you serious? We're on a network television show, granted at 11:30 at night, and we have the star of another network show blowing up that network. Like, absolutely bananas. Yeah.
I doubt that would happen today for a few reasons. I mean, of course, you mentioned the obvious one, but yeah, network on network crime doesn't seem to be happening much
Right.
anymore. They seem to be more buddies. You had the late night hosts on the CBS, NBC, and ABC doing a whole podcast together during
Exactly.
COVID. Yeah, that
more
wouldn't happen
kumbaya
back
these days.
then. Yeah. That's when there was competition and rivalry. No, that was
Exactly.
great. And they gave the people what they wanted. He's coming from taxi. He's familiar with taxi. So right away, let's do let's do something taxi related. That's what we saw with Adam Driver. And first thing, in his first episode, he was Kylo Ren doing a sketch as Kylo Ren. So we're kind of giving the people what we want. Bill, like, you like that as a viewer?
Sure, absolutely. And to put yourself in the mindset of a 1982 viewer, the network shows where you were attached to them in a way I think that is not quite the same today. There are shows like that, obviously, that people still attach themselves to and things like that. But when popular shows that weren't quite getting the ratings that the networks wanted were canceled, people would petition, would not riot in the streets, but they would get to a point where, they would do whatever they could to try to bring the show back. And I think this is a perfect example of that. And to have this kind of moment in time encapsulated on SNL is really, really interesting.
Yeah, 100%. Just like a bygone era of network TV. It's like a really neat time capsule to see. I think he was kind of light though, like on sketches. I think he did really well this episode. Just a little light on sketches. Were there any highlights that you wanted to talk about from his first hosting gig here?
Yeah, one of the interesting things, and this has come up on the host countdown on the SNN, it's hard to explain to people who haven't gone back and watched, pre-2000, that SNL didn't lean on its host as much as they do today. Today you'll get them in 10, 11 sketches sometimes, or segments. They didn't always do that back then, and you're right, there isn't as much here. In fact, I think the last 20 minutes of the show, we don't even see him. Which
right, he just kind of disappeared.
Bananas. Like, that's just crazy to think about.
I didn't know if his makeup from Pudge and Solomon was like hard to get off, so they just kind of like said take the rest of the night off or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how did that come to be? But yeah, he just kind of completely disappears. But yeah, Solomon and Pudge is a great one to talk about. That's one of my favorite recurring sketches from that era. I think it's just one of those quieter recurring things that we got. It really showcases Eddie and Joe. And when they bring somebody in like Danny to play off of them, I found that very interesting.
Play the same song. Where you been? You all disappeared on us. I disappeared last December when we had that big snowstorm. I'm home in my room with my coat on, trying to keep warm. I'm drinking some wine, getting down, you know what I mean? You getting down on it. I look down at the bottom and it says on the label, visit our vineyards in Sonoma Valley. Next thing you know, I'm walking around some valley. You walking in the valley? I'm walking in the valley in Sonoma. I look up.
The executive stress test, I think, is probably the best original sketch that we see. He's working for this company and he's been promoted, but they kind of want to make sure that he's got the bones for it. So he calls his wife, and his wife is clearly having some kind of intimate affair with a gardener. And, he's perplexed on what's happening. Eddie comes in as a drug dealer who's saying that he owes all this money for the drugs that he's been taking. Christine Ebersol comes in and talks about the herpes that he gave her. So, and then it just kind of wraps up with, we just wanted to make sure you were okay with this job. So it's all an act, and as we find out towards the end. So I think that's one of the better acting moments that we get to see from Danny in this episode.
Yeah, he played really aggravated, confused, like really well in that sketch. That's where his acting ability really shines. I completely agree with that executive stress test sketch. Again, light episode. He was in a whiner sketch. He played kind of like somebody who was kind of annoyed, but tried to exercise some patience with the whiners.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me.
What?
Our headsets aren't working.
Well, you have to plug them in.
Well,
here.
don't kick the china.
All right, I won't kick the china. Just let me put. Here. Give me this. Plug it in.
Oh, thank you.
Let's be honest, that's good acting in and of itself, because those whiners are a little hard to take.
Yeah. I imagine
in the sketch
be,
and out of the sketch.
On an airplane, I imagine. For sure. So yeah, that was awesome acting by Danny. But I think even though he was only in a handful of sketches that night, his screen presence was really felt. And I'm not. It's not a surprise that the show brought him back just barely under 2 years later, 2 seasons later. But you could really feel Danny's like screen presence in this first episode, even given the light work.
Yeah, exactly. It's rare to see somebody come back that quickly at this point in the show. After we get out of the original era, Ebersol doesn't seem to like to have a lot of recurring hosts. So, yeah, to have him come back, as you said, quickly in season 9, pretty much, I think, is it the second episode of that season?
Yep, it's episode 2, yeah.
Yeah, and talk another strange thing. You know, we talked about Danny not really fitting the mold of what you would think an SNL host would be at that point, because he didn't have any movies coming out and things like that. Well, now he's hosting with his wife, Rhea Perlman. And you say, oh, well, she's on Cheers, right? But Cheers was 77th in the rankings, Nielsen rankings, the year before. It was not a hit. No. It was almost canceled. So here it is. They're just starting their second season. Danny's not on any show, but they're hosting the show together. So, like, that's really funny to me to see how that matched up. And the episodes where we get married couples, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. Your mileage may vary with, the Kim Bassingers and Alec Baldwins of the world.
Right.
But I think this one works pretty good. We get them together a lot, which is something that is great to see. They're not kind of separated. So I enjoyed this episode a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was good. The monologue was a little flat. It seemed like neither of them, they were kind of like, we're not sure what to do. We have some sort of
the whole Oscar thing.
Yeah, but it sort of fell flat a little bit. I'll give them a pass though, because like you said, this is a fun episode. It really shined a light on a reason why I love Danny DeVito. Is he plays like weird. So he's such weird energy that he could convey. And the 2 sketches from this episode that I was drawn most toward had that like weird quality about Danny. So that's what stood out to me for this episode.
Which sketches stood out for you?
So the Autograph Hounds one, I kind of got a kick out of, and they reminded me of you've seen The King of Comedy.
Yeah.
So they totally reminded me of like Sandra Bernhardt and Robert De Niro's characters from The King of Comedy.
Denise, you screwball! I said you were gonna miss it, and you missed it. Yes, you did. You missed it. I struck gold.
No, you didn't. You couldn't.
I did. I could, and I would even if I couldn't. You know, as Cole Porter said, it's delightful. It's delicious. It's DeWitt.
No.
Yeah. Joyce DeWitt. I saw her coming out of the Burger King, and I nailed her. Look at this. It says, to Herbie with love, Joyce DeWitt.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, what a woman.
They're out there waiting. Dick Cavett comes out, and it was really funny. I think there was an ad lib that Dick Cavett made that kind of caught Danny off of guard a little bit. He referenced his hat or something.
Yes.
And Danny was like, so he kind of tried to play it off. Danny's obsessed with Ed McMahon. That's like his white whale of autographs. So, but the way that they talk about it, there's just like he and Rhea Perlman's in that sketch as well, and Tim Kazurinsky, and the way they're playing that is something at the King of Comedy. It just like he plays weird so well.
Yeah, and I wonder if I think this is about the time that movie was coming out, so it might be a kind of an homage to that. Yeah, that's a great point. I had not thought of that.
Yeah, I think because I've recently seen The King of Comedy, so I'm like, oh yeah, they exactly remind me of. He reminds me of Rupert Pupkin.
For me, one of my favorite, and I think we get to see, as you said, the wacky side of Danny is the Small World sketch, which just really cracks me up. And I know you'll get this reference. It's about 12 years later that we get the Wake Up and Smile with David Alan Grier and Will Ferrell, and one of the all-time greats. This gets forgotten. I think this is along that lines and is almost like the ancestor to what that would be, where they get stuck on the Small World ride in Disney and they're playing that infectious and annoying song over and over and over again. And, cut to 3 hours later, and now Kazurinsky's dead. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to get him off this, this ride that anybody could easily just jump off of and, jump on the stairs and get out of there. But I love the wackiness of this and the darkness that's kind of under the cover of It's a Small World after all. So we get to see Danny really shine here with Rhea.
The boat stopped.
Hey, that means we're trapped in here.
Roger, don't just sit there, just try and get us out of here. You're gonna have to swim for help.
Don't be crazy, Doris. The boat's gonna start up any second. Come on, there's no need to panic.
It is that darkness, and I love when and Wake Up and Smile is like a great example. And I think Andrew Dismukes is somebody current who kind of like does things that are similar. Is when something just like some little thing that happens in life or some little inconvenience that just seems so innocuous and so small at the time just like freaks people out and it gets built up, and like you said, like Tim Kazurinsky like dies in the sketch, and in Wake Up and Smile, Will Ferrell kills David Alan Grier, and because the teleprompter's been off, the weatherman is dead, the teleprompter's been off for like 30 seconds, and they start freaking out. So I love when something's so simple that just like a minor inconvenience or gets escalated to 11 so quickly. Those are some of my favorite sketches, Bill.
100%. Yeah, this is one of those great moments that, again, I think is just forgotten because it's so long ago and it's in this kind of wishy-washy season of SNL.
Yeah, that was a good one. Small World from season 9, episode 2. Danny also played a weirdo, a stalker in a book beat. He wrote books about stalking a woman named Deborah Rappaport. And he's just like so right at home with these types of weird characters, as we've seen for a long time on It's Always Sunny. But kids, Danny was doing this in the 80s, 70s and 80s.
Yes, exactly. And I love the way that one ends, where he ends up getting shot by the woman he was stalking to begin with. It would be very easy to kind of put him in this box of the character that he played on Taxi. But he finds a different angle to the smarminess and the real like weirdness of all the different ways he can play that. He doesn't just do a caricature of another character that he's done. So I think, again, this is just a perfect example of what we get to see from Danny.
Yeah, 100%. It's also cool that he was able to do a sketch with Eddie, with the Dion. Like, it's neat as comedy nerds to be able to look it back. That's what's so darn cool about SNL is we have these pieces where you could go back and say, oh, Danny DeVito did something with Eddie Murphy. They're just doing a scene together. And what other show does that happen where we have this treasure trove of material with these two famous actors? And this might be, I can't remember honestly, unless I'm blanking, of that Danny DeVito and Eddie Murphy doing any movies together. But
nothing I can think of, no.
But we have this on SNL. Yeah. Like that's part of why I love this show.
See if you can answer this one. Look at the screen. All right, Frank is talking on the phone to his good friend, Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States. Suddenly, the President puts him on hold. What would Frank do?
Well, let me see. Back in the 60s, the Kennedy slighted him and he switched to Republican Party. Now, he's a different Frank now, so I think he let it slide, but he let them know not to let it happen again.
Maybe so, Dion. All right, for 50 points and a lot of prizes, let's see what Frank would do.
Even though it's a less than great game show concept,
Sure.
Danny really ratchets it up again as the game show host. You know, they don't just go with the obvious person in the host role. And the whole point is that they're cutting to scenes of Piscopo as Sinatra. And apparently, I don't know if you knew this, I had not heard this before, but the entire concept of this sketch was that Piscopo would shoot down ideas about Sinatra for sketches because he'd say, Frank wouldn't do that. So, you know, he was so embodied in what Frank Sinatra would be okay with that they decided to make an entire sketch about what would Frank do. So that's how the entire point of this sketch is to kind of stick it to Piscopo.
Yeah.
So kind of like that.
Yeah, that's a fun little nugget for SNL fans. Just kind of them ribbing Piscopo for his like adoration of Frank and not wanting to like go certain places with
right.
I love it. So I think, especially as far when you said like as far as two people hosting together, married couple hosting together, I think this came off really well. Danny came off great. He's looking like a mainstay on SNL, and the next one we get to see him play with an entirely different cast. So this is awesome. We see what he can do with another era of the show. So it was season 13, episode 6, December of 87. He's promoting Throw Mama from the Train. Bill, SNL nerd here. I love it when the host is in a cold open. I'm a sucker for that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, but I do have a trivia question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot, Thomas.
Oh, boy.
I know you like trivia as much as I do.
Uh-huh.
So I went back and kind of culled through the archives of it all. Do you know there's only 10 hosts from the Ebersol era that came into the next Lorne era? Now, we're not counting people like Lily or who were on the original era and then went into Ebersol. I'm talking Ebersol to Lorne. Only 10 times in the history of the show in the 35 years since that's happened. And Danny is one of those people. How many do you think you could name?
Oh, 3? Like, did Robin Williams?
Robin Williams, yep.
He was one of them.
A couple of obvious ones with former cast.
But like Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Bill and Chevy.
Yep.
I swear like Michael Keaton, but I don't know if he hosted under Lorne.
Very good.
Okay.
That's one of the ones I had forgotten. Yes.
Really? Yeah, I remember Michael hosting during the Ebersol era. Okay, so he did come back for Lorne. I guess I named 4. That's...
So there's also Drew Barrymore, Eddie, Rick Moranis, another one I had forgotten about because he had hosted with Dave Thomas in the Ebersol era, Jeff Bridges, and Kathleen Turner.
Okay,
so,
Jeff Bridges is one that would have somewhat surprised me.
It took a long time for him to come back. I think it was 2010. But I mean, it's just kind of because Lorne it felt like he had decided that era didn't exist in a lot of ways. He obviously couldn't ignore the Eddie of it all. But he must have thought an awful lot of Danny DeVito and what he had done the 2 times he had hosted previous to Lorne coming back to have him come into this new golden era in season 13. So I found it very, very interesting to see, like, this is one of the few people that Lorne was like, okay, we'll give him a pass. You know,
yeah, like
he's too good not to bring back.
No kidding. Yeah, that's a really cool stat. I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Love to do that.
Yeah,
you've done that to me, so I'm just paying it forward.
Like to my earlier point in excitement, like they must have really, like Lorne must have really seen something and trusted him, and the writers must have trusted him. Again, he's in this cold open, and you don't often see that with hosts, and I love that's one of those little SNL things that like I love seeing.
Well, and again, not to keep going back to the host countdown, but that's something that we've seen with the people who are really, really good being hosts, that they trust him so much that they could put them in a cold open. And, often I think the reason that we don't see it a lot is because cold open is one of the last things they do most weeks because it's often topical. So there's usually a political slant, especially these days. So it's not like the game show that they can write on a Tuesday night. So the host, if they're not comfortable or they're having a hard time adjusting to all the stress of doing the show, they don't want to add to that stress by putting cold open. And as you said, like having somebody like Danny, who you know you can trust, and putting him in there with somebody like Phil Hartman in a topical sketch at the time, Reagan versus Gorbachev, it was really a tip of the cap to what they were able to think of Danny.
Yeah, and I think it's also too, I mean, obviously like the quick turnaround between the Live from New York and the monologue, and the host has to be ready for the monologue. And usually, I mean, the host is required to be in the monologue. Cast members may or may not be in the monologue. So they have time to like dress and stuff, but the host has to like change and then go do the monologue. So unless it's a pre-tape, unless it's, something like that, I can see logistically why that might not happen. But Danny was so good here, like as Gorbachev, like getting annoyed at Reagan's like little Hollywood anecdotes and babbling, and all of that. So like just a really fun characterization by Danny, really inspired casting. They could have gotten Lovitz or something to play Gorbachev here.
It is important that we do not expect too much from this summit, but it is first step. And from first step, many. Please, Ron, stop staring at my forehead.
Oh, I'm sorry I did it again, didn't I? I'm trying so hard not to, but I've got kind of a mental thing about it.
Yeah.
Please, continue.
Oh, never mind. Wasn't important. Anyway, here we are in Washington, D.C. Please give me the grand tour.
And Phil's Reagan is so fantastic. Probably the best that we've gotten on the show. And to see the two of them play off of each other, and Reagan just keeps getting distracted as he's showing them the Washington, D.C. monuments. And instead of talking about, the historical value, it's, where Jimmy Stewart made a movie, or where so-and-so stood on the steps and gave this monologue in a movie back in 1940, and Gorbachev wants nothing to do with it. And I think Danny really plays off of Phil so well in this scenario.
Yeah, so cool to see Danny in the cold open. A light little monologue. He's saying that he went to school with Bruce Springsteen from Asbury Park, so he's trying to he's showing probably doctored yearbook photos of them, but just a fun just a quirky little Danny thing. It highlights Bill from this his third hosting gig.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have to talk about Church Chat, right? Because this is, one of those few instances in the Church Chat history where the host has done it twice. Now, technically, he was not the host the first time he did Church Chat. He was a special guest with Willie Nelson's episode in the season before, kind of like a crutch because they weren't sure how much Willie could do. So they picked up the bat phone, literally, and said, Danny, can you do? And he came in and did 2 or 3 sketches.
Because Willie's not an actor, and how high is he going to be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it is the 80s, and it is Willie. So they do the first Church Chat in this one, but this is the one that's more remembered because this was in Christmas specials, probably until the early 2010s. When you'd see these best of Christmas SNLs, where he's, ends up singing, I think Santa Claus is coming to town, correct? Yeah.
No, here comes Santa Claus. I think he's singing. Yeah. But yeah, this was something that everybody, even if they hadn't watched this era of the show, was really familiar with because you get to see Danny singing with the church lady's playing the drums. I'm sure that if you have a kid who was watching this in the early 2000s, you'd have to explain who Jessica Hahn was. But other than that, you've got this great chemistry again with another cast member and Danny, with Dana and Danny. I think they were really good together. So Church Chat has always been one of those things. It's one of the first recurring sketches that really spoke to me. So I love going back and watching any Church Chat I can, and this is one of the best ones that they do.
All righty. Now, Deanna, you've been very, very busy. I understand you have a new motion picture out, Throw Mama from the Train.
That's right.
Well, that's a charming little title, Daniel. And what is our little film about?
Well, in the movie, I want Billy Crystal to do away with my mother, knock her off, because she's a pain in the neck.
Oh, so it's a family picture. We've done a little film about murdering our mother, just in time for Christmas. How convenient.
Come on, loosen up, church lady. I mean, it's a comedy.
Yeah, I always remember loving this one even when I was a kid. Like, if you're a child of the 80s, you were bombarded with Jim Baker and Tammy Faye Baker, Jessica Hahn, like all those all those people. All this, like, so if you were an SNL fan as a kid, watching the news as a kid, you knew who these people were. I have vivid memories of like Jan Hooks as Jessica Hahn. So this was like, this is like something that's etched in my SNL brain. And Danny just like playing himself. It's a good vehicle, of course, for the church lady to shame him and then show obviously she has like sexual repression deep down in there, scolding Danny about the title of his movie. He's promoting Throw Mama from the Train. So this is one of the very like memorable, I think this one and like the Sean Penn one, the Rob Lowe one, those are like the handful of church lady ones that I'll always remember.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that stands out. Another one that I really like from this episode is Mona Lisa. And it's Danny and our girl Jan are this redneck couple living in this trailer. And they've somehow decided to call in this appraiser who's played by Phil Hartman because they're not sure that their Mona Lisa is the real thing. And of course it's not. But, it's an easy mistake to make for something like that. It's a reprint, it's on blah, blah, blah. And it just escalates. And it gets into, there's Stradivarius, but it actually turns out to be a little kid's plastic ukulele.
Right.
And Phil just keeps, dashing their dreams, the amount of money. They spent $50 on this. Gold doubloon, which turns out to be, of course, a chocolate candy that's got the gold wrapper on it, until they get to the Orlov diamond, and it is the actual diamond. And Phil sees an opportunity to fool these supposedly dumb people.
No, this is just glass.
Mister, you are a liar. You get out of here. Liar, that is the Orloff diamond, mister. We had it appraised at the American Gemological Society. It's a certified stone.
Sure is. Perhaps I can take another look.
Get out of here.
Out. Scram. Get out of here, mister. We
Go
don't need
on,
no
get out of my house.
around here. Go on, get out. Get
Scram.
out. Scram. Woo, out. You scared me for a minute there.
Yeah, that phony had me thinking we've been ripped off right and left.
I know it. You know what? We shouldn't have let him eat that gold doubloon, though.
That's all right. We got plenty more where that came from.
True.
Yeah.
It's just such a great work with Jan again. It's never not good to see somebody with Jan, but I think Danny plays really well with that. Phil playing the smarmy role is kind of a strange kind of turn of the head because he's always not really in that role a lot, but I think he plays it really well, and getting to see the way that they all play off each other is really, really great.
Yeah, and seeing Danny play like a southern, like a redneck character, like that's like a kind of against type of what Danny will usually play. So that was so fun. Like, yeah, you're right. Like anybody paired with Jan, it's gonna make for good watching. But it just really struck me as how Danny was playing this like southern character. He wasn't playing an angry boss, or he wasn't, he just fell right into this. Like good acting chops, man. That's like really, those acting chops really definitely helped the sketch.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, we're talking about season 13, and you can argue that this is maybe the greatest season of SNL, one of the greatest for sure, 13, 14. And I, when people ask me about this, like, well, how, why, what makes it so special? I think what you see is, and we'll talk about this sketch now a little bit, the doorman, which kind of wraps up the night. Mm-hmm. It's a buzzword, especially within the SNL community, slice of life. But this is actual slice of life, and it's not played for laughs. Danny's a doorman at an expensive hotel, and he's talking to Nora, who comes in, and none of the people in the building really seem to know each other because coming and going, and they're all rich and this and that. But obviously, Danny, as the doorman, does. And Phil is moving out of the building that day, and they start to realize that they had never really gotten to talk to each other in a meaningful way. And this kind of really touches Phil.
It's funny. It just hit me. I've seen you every day for years, and I don't know anything about you. I mean, I don't know anything about your life or where you're from or your family.
It's no big deal. I mean, The building is a big chunk of my life, so I'm here. I'm here.
Just hits me.
Well, you know, I live in Long Island City. I commute. I got 3 kids. Little one, Amy's still in high school. Yeah. The big one, my son's in engineering school. Oh, he's so smart. The kid is. My Susan, she's at Queens College. Yeah.
And I love this. Like this, you would not see this in modern SNL, for better or worse, and I think for worse, because there's not a lot of laughs here. It's just 3 people and then 2 people having a conversation, figuring out, you know, human way to be, and it's just, I don't know. This is something that always gets to me. I love this, and again, getting to see Danny and Phil work together so much this week is fantastic. And this was kind of the cherry on top of a great episode of SNL.
You said it perfectly. Like, this is one of those things that I love that touches on shared human experiences, because we've all been in that situation where we kind of get one-on-one with somebody, the coworker, maybe a family member, like some cousin that maybe we should know better, but we haven't. So we get up one-on-one and it's like, what do we talk about? And then so they're reminiscing about, like, because they only know each other as doorman and tenant. So they're like, remember when that package was delivered and it fell back here? Like, so that's their only common ground that they're establishing right away is that, like, a one of tenant and doorman. So I think that's like funny, and it's like, it's inherently funny, but it's not like played for like comedic heights necessarily. It's very relatable, but I just love that. But there's humanity there, because you're right. Like, feel like they want to get to know each other, but they're just struggling to figure out the common ground that they have outside of, like, the obvious tenant doorman thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're from 2 walks of life. You know, you imagine this to be probably a fairly low paying job, and Phil as, you know, the rich person who's leaving this building probably for an even nicer place. So yeah, to find, as you said, the common ground is really, really interesting.
Great season. I'm so glad that Danny came back to play with this cast. He's back the next season. Season 14, episode 7, December of 88. He and Arnold did Twins. They're out there promoting that movie. Arnold makes an appearance here in this episode. They had to do Hans and Franz cold open again. Danny's in the cold open, Bill. 2 episodes in a row.
Danny's in the cold open with Hans and Franz, which by this point was getting a little stale, but he injects life into it as an even more extreme workout partner with Hans and Franz. Victor, I believe his name was. He's taking it past the pump you up into, you should be dead if you're not working out. So, yeah. And then, as you said, Arnold, think only the one of 2 times we ever see him on SNL as well. Yeah. I think he does a filmed cameo at some other point. But yeah, he's sitting in the audience with Maria Shriver. And this, to me, talk about this monologue. Now, you know, we've talked about a couple of monologues that are kind of, okay. We get to see literally behind the door, Thomas. And other than Melissa McCarthy on that Mother's Day episode, do we ever really see this? Like, I can't think of another time.
Not on the show. Like, the SNL's released videos, and we get to see, like, the host waiting.
Yes.
Or the James Franco documentary, we got to see John Malkovich waiting. But you're right. Like, in an actual episode, we don't see that.
Yeah, and it's all because he had such a rush coming out for the first time. So he wants to do it again, and that's how they get Arnold involved. He gets to see it live from New York, and they're playing the montage, and Danny's just back there, and you can see him getting riled up. And I mean, it's such a tiny space, and it's so funny to think about it, because I think in your mind, especially then when you didn't have as many behind the scenes things to see, you're like, this has to be a huge space. You know, they're walking out onto 88. No, it's smaller than a closet in your house, like, and, you know, could barely fit 2 people as they're standing back there. But it's just fascinating. And I know when I was watching this in 1988 that it blew my mind. Like, it's just one of those moments that you're like, oh my God, did we really see behind the door? So,
right.
It's just fantastic. It's just such a great way to open probably his best episode, arguably.
No, yeah, I think it might be, and that's perfect, like, for SNL geeks like us. Yeah, seeing that backstage. I love Danny mouthing when, like, Don Pardo's like because they do the whole intro, and I had forgotten that they did that. When I watched this again, I'm like, oh, they might just say Danny's name and he's gonna come. No, they did like the whole intro. I guess back then there weren't as many cast members, so but you could see him mouth like, Nora Dunn, and then I love how the look on his face when he was able to mouth Danny DeVito. He looked all excited. Yes, exactly. And then you see the stage director is like, okay, go, and then I love it. He's tired, so he does the rest of the monologue laying down.
Exactly. So unique. Even at this point, they had done probably 300-400 episodes of SNL. So to find a new twist on it was really, really great. And again, to this day, we don't really see something like this. So a lot of fun.
This episode has in the running for maybe the best sketch that Danny was in throughout his 6 episodes. I don't know if we're doing parallel thinking as far as what stood out, but I want to hear from you.
There's so much from this one. I assume you're talking about You Shot Me?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
yes. Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness. How great is this?
How about you, senor? Do you know how to dance?
Oh, you shot me!
Oh no, I shot you! Did I hit you? Where did I hit you?
My foot! Oh, it burned!
I shot you in the foot?
Yeah,
oh no, let me see. Oh no. Oh no, are you all right? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you.
Get away from me!
Okay?
You shot me!
Does it hurt? I'm so sorry. I don't mean, let me help you.
Get away!
A nothing concept. And talk about where host matters. He finds a way to make, and Lovitz too, but basically to set it up, he's a Mexican bandolier in this old West town, and he walks in and they do the whole stereotypical thing with shoot at his feet to make the guy dance, and they don't usually hit them, even in the movies, but somehow Danny hits Lovitz, and it turns into, you shot me. You shot me.
Over and over.
Just over and over and over again. And there's so many other people in this sketch, but who the hell knows that? Because it's just Lovitz and Danny going back and forth. Lovitz is clearly trying to make Danny break, especially towards the end when he's in the bed. You shot me again. This is one of those, all-time moment with Lovitz. But again, like if you had an off week and this was, I don't know, Chris Everett, this doesn't work. Like, you need an all-time classic host coming in here to carry a one-note sketch like this and make it into an all-time classic.
It is one note, but it's also clever. To me, it has, I don't know what the writing credit on is, but it has like Conan O'Brien's fingerprints on this,
that
or Smigel or somebody like that.
Yes,
I don't know if your close personal friend Robert Smigel mentioned this sketch to you.
Yes.
I don't know.
He has not, but I can ask him next time we have coffee.
Yeah, ask him. It feels like Conan or Jack Handy or just that whole writing stable, like the cliche of now dance for me, and like you see the cowboy like shooting at but what if the cowboy accidentally shot him in the foot? And also, what if the guy still maybe felt a little bad about shooting him? So that
goes to his house the next day.
Yeah, exactly. That's like one of the things. He's like, it's almost like I didn't mean to shoot him. I was just trying to literally get him to dance. So that's like another just like layer to this. Yes. And then I love how Danny tries to convince him that maybe we're both at fault if you really think about it.
That's right. And that's when you see Lovitz turn and really start to hammer Danny with the shot me's. And you almost see Danny break. I think he does a pretty good job of turning his head so you can't really see it. But you know what's happening. We know what's happening there.
Yeah, Danny seems like somebody who's just always wanting to stay in the scene. As goofy as he can be, he seems like somebody who's like, here's the scene, I'm staying in this. Because it's going to make it better. So, yeah, to me, that's like a forgotten classic. Kind of hard to watch nowadays. You kind of have to know where to be a sleuth and know where to look. But this was one when I was a kid. And the "you shot me" is like, hearing Lovitz say that's just burned into my SNL brain again.
Yeah, and it's only done this one time, but it is one of those things that you would say with your friends. And it held up the test of time for a long time.
To me, that's the highlight of the episode. But again, you're right. Like, what else? Like, good episode. What else struck you?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you wonder why some of the Christmas sketches haven't carried through. And I think, talk about underrated and forgotten, I think the Scrooge sketch in this is really phenomenal.
I mean, last Christmas I gave away so much money and forgave so many loans. I mean, I just barely got my head above water this year.
Boy, you gave everyone some great Christmas presents.
Ah, tell me about it.
Yeah, and then you got New Year's Eve presents for everybody.
Yeah, I know, and I didn't even realize that you're not supposed to give New Year's Eve presents.
Well, they were nice, though.
Tell me about it. They were,
yeah.
they
Well,
were
sir,
good.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have given me that raise.
No. Huh? The raise was good. But I think I should have just concentrated on you and a little less on the rest of the world.
You know, it's been done to death. We've seen it as recently as Steve and Marty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Scrooge is just kind of hammered into the zeitgeist as far as Christmas stuff. But yeah, they basically it's Danny as Scrooge and Dana as Marley, and it's the next year. So we've moved a year past, you know, his realization about the world and how he's been, you know, so mean to everyone. And he's still nice, but he's trying to cut back. And that's really the genius of this concept to me. He's paying for Tiny Tim's medical bills, but he's moving him to a smaller, a cheaper hospital. He's still going to get great care. And, you know, Dana's kind of a dick in this. Like, he's just like, well, okay. You know, and like he offers to get him a turkey. And he's like, well, last year, you know, you got me the biggest goose in town. Like, what? So he's being kind of... he's being overextended by this, and he spent so much the year before that he's again still being nice, but he needs to. And then it escalates where we get Victoria in one of her better roles, I think, who's trying to collect for drunken sailors who want to stay drunk. And you know, you donated all this money to them last year, Mr. Scrooge. Like, why can't? And he eventually is talked into it, but it's so smartly written, and it's one of those things again that just kind of could have been overplayed. It's not. It's perfectly done. A quieter piece as far as Christmas pieces go, but yeah, this is something that sticks out to me and something that I've almost forgotten over the years because we don't see it in the specials.
So yeah, a couple of like really cool, smart pieces with the Scrooge and the "you shot me," and another thing. Anything else that kind of sticks out for you?
I mean, I think you know, it's another Christmas piece, and it's not as good as the Scrooge one we just talked about. But they double down on Wonderful Life here too, where Kevin's in the Jimmy Stewart role and looks like he's going to kill himself, and Danny shows up as his angel, but he wasn't going to kill himself. He was actually, you know, admiring life and kind of just contemplating all the good in the world. And Danny's just never going to get his wings because he can't find anybody who's ready to jump off a bridge. And, you know, then we get Phil and Dana in there as well. So that's another one that's kind of something that sticks out to me that I think I will put into my Christmas rotation along with the Scrooge one because I think they just really hold up.
Yeah, I like that one. A little parade of ghosts there.
Right, yeah.
In that one.
All the
too,
angels waiting
like,
for their wings.
Yeah, absolutely. So a really great appearance. That was his fourth gig, season 14, episode 7, January of 93. His fifth time, though, according to Danny in the show. This might be his fourth time, Bill. I don't know. We'll get to that here probably in a few minutes.
We will.
But this is his fifth time, damn it. And what I'm going to call unofficially the Amy Fisher episode of SNL.
Gather the kids around and explain why the hell an entire episode of SNL is dedicated to this one story.
Like almost an entire episode of SNL.
Oh my goodness. Like, but you know, I mean, you're younger than me, Thomas. This was everywhere. And
I remember.
Yeah, I mean,
completely.
This is accurate to the time that it's in. And you would never see this. We talked about Alec Baldwin on the episode that you were on with us on the SNN and on the John Goodman episode for the host and how they leaned into the Monica Lewinsky thing. And it was an entire episode dedicated to that controversy. And you wouldn't see this on SNL today because it's more of the YouTube bits. What can we put up online and as a 5-minute thing? To have a runner like this with Danny playing multiple roles. He's playing Buttafuoco a couple of times. If you don't know what we're talking about, kids, go look it up. We're not going to explain it to you. Amy Fisher, Joey Buttafuoco. It's a real thing. But and they do this 4 or 5 times. We get this runner throughout the episode. And then they do other sketches dedicated to it as well.
So the runner is they start off with Aaron Spelling's Amy Fisher. It's like a takeoff on Beverly Hills 90210. So they play it like that. Danny's playing Joey Buttafuoco.
Amy, you really did it this time. You really banged up your car.
Yeah.
I'll bet that's not all you could bang.
Yeah.
The only Amy Fisher story told from Tori Spelling's point of view.
You know, I've been with the same woman for 17 years.
That's crazy.
You don't want to get involved with an old guy like me.
And then they do a Masterpiece Theater version of it that Danny was in again. My favorite one, Danny wasn't in, but it was the BET version with Ellen Cleghorn and Tim Meadows.
So good.
Good. Yeah, that was really good.
And the whole concept of this was, we were talking earlier about the networks, fighting each other and how they only had each other. I mean, cable was prevalent at this point in the early 90s, but there was a competing movie of the week for this Amy Fisher controversy, and 3 different networks were putting out a movie within weeks of each other. So that's where this whole concept came from, and why they were doing things like the BBC and BET, and then eventually getting into an infomercial with Ron Popeil.
Right. Jan Hooks was playing Mary Jo Buttafuoco, who was Joey's wife, who got the crap end of that whole deal. I would say. Again, kids, go look it up.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I mean, there are some good sketches in here as well that we can get into.
Yeah, and it's not all Amy Fisher. I mean, it was heavily dominated. The monologue I thought was really cool. I feel like most great hosts have to do at least one song and dance monologue in their SNL tenure. So we get the song and dance monologue with Danny and Rob Schneider doing like a little vaudeville number.
You see, I wasn't well liked when I was a kid.
I didn't get the attention my siblings did.
That's why I'd crawl under a cow and suckle if it would make you chuckle.
I did my face in some acid on your behalf.
Yes, I'll do anything to make you laugh. Tell me, Mr. S.
Yes, Mr. D.
How old were you when you first slept with a woman?
Why, I was 32 years old.
I'll pick up a radio and jump in the tub.
Of all the people to do a song and dance with, I mean, who else but Rob Schneider, right?
Yeah, first choice.
I'll do anything for a laugh. Yeah, kind of reminiscent of what would come, but listen, it's okay. The vaudeville end of it I really like because that's not something we see on SNL very often, maybe a couple of times in the original era. But yeah, it's something different, as you said, as his 5th time comes around here to find a different angle. You get the Walkins of the world who are always doing a song and dance, and this is the first time that Danny's doing something like this.
Yeah, so at least he gets his song and dance monologue add the way. That's like a rite of passage if you're going to be a multi-time SNL host. One recurring character from this era, Bill, that I've never talked to you about is Simon, Mike Myers' character. And this is the Simon that I really remember when I was a kid watching. I remember Danny DeVito in the bathtub. This is probably my favorite installment of the Simon sketches.
Yeah, they tended to be a little repetitive. Yeah. I mean, how much can you do with a lonely boy in a bathtub over and over again like this? But it's a fun sketch. I think this is one of Mike's better moments on the show. He always finds this kind of sweetness about this boy who's been left in a hotel room by his, errant father and the mother who's with the angels. But now this time he's found a friend. And, it's this little Italian boy whose father's probably doing something untoward as well. because his pictures are a lot darker than what Simon is used to. So there's a lot of fun here. This is one of the most memorable ones because of the way they were able to play off of each other and the fact that he keeps shocking Simon with his graphic artwork.
Yeah, those drawings were those drawings were really funny. Like Simon's was his dad losing money at the roulette table, so you alluded to like a darkish backstory for Simon, and then the other one was a guy that Vinny's dad whacked, and he's dressed as Santa
because sometimes Santa's got to get whacked.
Yeah, sometimes he has to. My favorite part of this, though, what really kind of elevated it for me is because Simon always says, like, "Are you looking at my bum? You bum looker, cheeky monkey." So Danny's Italian. I put boy ? His Italian boy. It's supposed to be a boy, but he's like obviously playing it like a the Italian man. But he's saying,
Were you looking at my ass? Don't look at my ass, ass looker. They was looking at my ass. Don't let him.
So that was the part where I really that really stood out for me.
Yeah, that's the part that definitely stands out after and has stood the test of time as far as this goes. You can tell they're having a lot of fun together in this sketch. So, to find a different angle with Simon at this point was really great. And Danny plays it perfectly.
Yeah, quite the feat for that. January of 93, that was quite the feat to find a different angle for this one. What do you got that stood out to you from this, his 5th time hosting?
Well, this fascinates me because it's funny, but also because of maybe a seedling of the Always Sunny stuff that we talked about earlier. Talking about books on tape.
Okay, let's try one.
I'm having a problem with the word at the top of the page.
Which one?
The P word. Couldn't I just say vagina?
Heston, you sound like an old whore. Read it the way Madonna wrote it. Show some respect.
So we've got Phil as Charlton Heston, who's going to read the book, and Danny is going to describe the photos, which I didn't know was a thing with audiobooks. I don't know. Is that something they still do today? I'm not sure. But Danny's playing this sleazy Al Goldstein, who's known in the porn industry and things like that. And they're reading Madonna's sex book, which was, the only thing that was almost as popular as Amy Fisher was the sex book by Madonna. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have the internet back then, kids. So, but they're reading from it, and Phil's playing his perfect Charlton Heston, and he's like, I don't want to say that word. Couldn't I just say vagina? And Al Goldstein, Danny, is scolding him. Just say it how she wants to say it. Don't be an old whore. Now, if you watch Always Sunny, this is a word that Frank Reynolds, Danny DeVito, says in almost every freaking episode. So my thinking is that this kind of sat in his brain from 1993 till 2006, and he decided to kind of put a little Al Goldstein into Frank Reynolds. And, comedy gold was, fermented. Like, it's just amazing because he says it exactly the same way.
Yeah, so we're seeing like a caveman version of Frank Reynolds here with his Al Goldstein depiction.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love
exactly.
That theory.
But yeah, he has a lot of great lines in this where he's talking about the picture and he's like, she's squatting over the mirror like she's getting ready to snap the ball to Warren Moon. Madonna, you are such a whore.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite.
To Warren Moon.
To Warren Moon. I know, and I thought about it. I'm like, who else could they like? I think choosing Warren Moon's the best play. So I'm like, probably, Jim Kelly, no, Steve Young, no, Warren Moon. That's like a perfect one.
Exactly. So just for its historical possible significance,
sure,
that's one that sticks out for me.
But yeah, that was a good one.
Shifty Eyes, I think, is really good, where he barely has to say anything, and it's just he's sitting in a restaurant with Julia, and she's talking about traffic and her newspaper missing a section that morning, and they just do this dramatic music and close in on his eyes, and his eyes are shifting back and forth like he had done something wrong. And it just kind of escalates from there, where we get Sandler coming in, and they're talking about somebody pissing in the ginger ale, and Phil comes in as the waiter and says, what do you guys, what took so long? You guys back there jerking off? And, Phil's just like, but Danny's eyes in this are so great. Talk about a great actor. Like, this is just, he doesn't have a lot of lines per se, but being able to say the whole scene with what his eyes are saying is just so, so great.
And he was given permission to overact on purpose.
Yes.
Which is always good. I love watching a good actor be a bad actor on purpose. So this was like overacting with their eyes and stuff. It was, really great. Adam Sandler, great in this. Phil, as always, just knocks it out of the park. This was a good one. The Hitman one I got a kick out of too. It was a guy who wants his wife to stay out of his business. He's a mobster. He gets a call that he has to go like take care of something, but then he's asking his wife like the best way to get to the place, but she's getting too specific for him. So he's like, "Stay out of my business." And so that's kind of like a
Where do you want me to dump the body? Where do you want to dump the body? Don't ask me about my business.
Yeah. And then he pulls a Godfather. He pulls a Michael Corleone. He's like, "I'll let you ask me about my business one time."
That's
okay,
right.
What do you do? I'm an import-exporter.
Yes. Yeah. This is great. And again, we just keep talking about Danny being able to work with so many different people on the show, and with Shifty Eyes, and then with this one, getting to see the underrated Julius Sweeney play off of Danny is so, so great. It really just is that concept of there's always a great woman behind any great man, right? So they find a good twist to that. And I think this is really well played in something that could have been very predictable.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned seeing Danny work with people. So you said Julius Sweeney. I got a kick out of seeing him in a sketch with Eddie Murphy. He was in a sketch with Chris Rock, which I thought was really neat. It was the Adults Living at Home sketch. It was like a support group for adults who live at home. And everybody's trying to justify like why they live at home, or they don't really. Kevin Nealon's like, my mom's just my roommate. I'm not living with her. But Danny's character is like, has no intention of moving out. He loves living at home because his mom does everything for him.
My mom says there's only one thing more pathetic than a grown man that lives at home. And that's any woman willing to sneak into his room.
Well, so what does that tell you?
Well, maybe it's time I made the big move. It's about that time I made that big move. To the basement.
What about you, Paul?
Well, some women don't like my bunk bed. But, hey, where's my brother going to sleep?
Chris Rock, who's completely like, they may as well put him on the side of a milk carton at this point in his SNL tenure, because he's not in anything at this point. That is a great point. And seeing him in Sandler in Shifty Eyes as well, I think you're getting to see him with so many different people who go on to, superstardom.
Fun time capsule, SNL, just a fun time capsule in general. So you see Danny working with Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Phil Hartman. That's just so fun. So another great episode from '93. His last one, the final episode of the Millennium. Danny has the honor of hosting. It's season 25, episode 8, December 11th, 1999. Bill, I want to maybe let you rant about this monologue as an SNL nerd.
Thank you. It's great to be back here hosting the show. Not only is this my 5th time hosting the show, but I am truly... Thank you. Oh, yes, 5. I joined the 5 Club, whatever it is. I don't know what they got here, but it's some kind of little group or something.
Listen, we talked about this with Marty. We talk about this with Marty all the time, because Martin Short who I nominated last season, never seems to know how many shows he's hosted. He switches back and forth between 1 and 3 and 4. This is so strange in what should have been a celebration of, really, I think only the second time we had heard of the Five Timers Club. We get the famous Tom Hanks sketch in 1990, but here we are in 1999, and we're not doing Five Timers jackets with every host at this point. It's not a thing. I think Goodman references the 7 Timers at some point. He's got a crown with the 7 on it, but it hasn't turned into what it's become today. And instead of getting a jacket, he gets a Mr. Peepers. Which I like to think, I don't think this was written by my best friend Smigel, but I'd like to think that's when I talked to him about the Hall of Fame, he said, am I going to get a set of Peepers ears in the mail? So I like to think that this is where he got that idea from, that Danny was given a Mr. Peepers for his 5th, 6th time. Is he going to get something similar for getting into the SNL Hall of Fame? So
good catch.
But yeah, the whole concept of ignoring some episode. I mean, we can assume that they're ignoring the one he did with his wife.
Right.
Who knows? Like, how did nobody fact check this? I know there was no SNL stats back then, but this is an easy one to figure out. And, he just keeps talking about it. He doesn't even call it the Five Timers Club. I think he calls it the Five Club. So it's just so bananas to think about. Was it kind of a mea culpa by SNL that they wanted to do something for a Five-Timer sketch and they had missed the opportunity with Danny? So now here he was coming in, filling in, as pretty well known, filling in for Jim Carrey, who was supposed to host this week. He was a last-minute fill-in host. Otherwise, we would have stopped talking about him in 1993, which is crazy to think about. So maybe this was kind of their way to be like a little pat on the back, a little attaboy. But yeah, now as an SNL nerd, it makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Up there with Marty saying that he's hosted as many times as Robert Blake. No, you haven't, Marty. You've hosted a lot more than that murderer.
I thought so. I thought of you, of course, right away. I'm like, oh, Bill's gonna love this monologue. The one that just like I've always loved, but a lot of people don't talk about. Like, people talk about the delicious dish. They talk about Anna and Molly. They talk about Alec going on Sweaty Balls. They even talk about Betty White's appearance on Delicious Dish. But this one that Danny was on, honestly, to me, it may not rival Sweaty Balls, but it's right there. To me, this one's such a wonderful premise. Just like, to me, it's just like almost brilliant. Like, this is one of my favorite top 2 Delicious Dish sketches, but this is just a great sketch on its own.
Yes.
I love this one.
Yes, love. Probably my favorite one.
Yeah.
The Delicious Dish. It's kind of funny to me, and for better or for worse, what Delicious Dish became because of Sweaty Balls and leading into, doing another sweaty thing with Baldwin, and then obviously the Dusty Muffins with Betty. It wasn't always just a play on let's find a dirty way, let's find a nice way to say something dirty. There was a concept behind these two very soft-spoken women and their guests. Sometimes it turned into something else. But yeah, this is the most well-written Delicious Dish, in my opinion. We kind of hone in. They don't mention Y2K a lot in this episode, which for a show that's always topical, they don't really talk about the fact that everybody was shitting their pants, whether, if computers were going to shut down and airplanes were going to fall out of the sky because none of these computers knew how to go to the year 2000. But yeah, this is the apocalypse 6 months after the year 2000, and he's Chef Willie Boucher on his 167th consecutive show.
So, Willie, this is an exciting time to be cooking and an exciting time of year as the sights and sounds of the season turn our thoughts to avoiding starvation.
That's right. And avoiding starvation means wonderful culinary treats we can enjoy as we cower from the Aryan blood armies and packs of wild dogs who control the night.
It's neat.
It's fun.
It's fun.
And who knows? I don't. And obviously, probably no one's even listening to it. I doubt even the radio signals work. So, to me, they're doing this just to pass the time.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, they're making clam chowder out of whiteout.
I love
this
the
is a
characterization.
really, really stellar moment for Molly and Anna and Danny.
Yeah, like Molly bringing up a sex gang that was terrorizing the area. One of their topics was avoiding starvation. Just that simple. I love the line, it's amazing what desperation can make you do. And then Molly uses her example is that she spent the night with the bikers for a packet of ketchup.
Yes.
You're just seeing this desperation, this just post-apocalyptic world that they're all in. And the topic for the next show was what to serve if you've been paid a visit from the water militia. Like, just so clever. Like, just kind of hashing out with you, Bill, right now. It might actually be my favorite delicious dish.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Sweaty Balls gets all the pub, but like this is really, I mean, even the set design. We don't talk a lot about that with SNL, but I mean, it's really, really well done. Where they just kind of char up everything, and it's clearly been through hell. You'd like to imagine in your head that that's the set that they were on the last time you saw them pre-apocalypse, and it's just been burned to hell, and they're still sitting there, as you said, talking to no one. There's probably not even wires to those microphones at this point, and they're just doing this so they don't lose whatever sanity they have left.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, great premise, and it sets the template for the show in general. I mean, recurring characters, recurring sketches. Like, we're in 1999. Like, this is what's happening on SNL. So this is a snapshot of 1999. Like, so many recurring characters in this episode.
So many, some good, some not so good.
Sure.
When people talk about why don't they have recurrent characters anymore, there's stuff like this where it's just like, oh, there's way too much. Now, I like to think that to ease Danny into, I don't know how much lead up time he had knowing that he was filling in for Jim Carrey, but this was an easy way to write an entire show without putting too much pressure on, even though he was, obviously, as we've said, a well-established host at this point. If he's getting a call on Monday night, like, we really need some help here, you don't want to have to be like, hammering him with new ideas. So I think, but they definitely leaned into it a little too much here.
Yeah.
Crazy way to end the millennium for sure.
Yeah, Mango, it was the Boston Teens, it was Sally O'Malley. I didn't mind the Sally O'Malley one. It was kind of fun. But just there was not much that totally stood out aside from Danny's like commitment to his characters, typical stellar acting, an all-timer delicious dish sketch, in my opinion, but just very of the time.
Very of the time, but I do think, even with stuff that was completely played out by this point, like Mango, he does elevate whatever material is there. So, as you said, the Sally O'Malley, he makes that work. Mm-hmm. I think the Boston Teens really works pretty well, too, because he's playing the shop teacher, and there's a lot more physical comedy than you normally get in a Boston Teens, even though there's the obvious jokes as well. But, yeah, I mean, the material wasn't as strong. For a season that was pretty good, there's more here than normally would be. Again, going back to not everybody could do this. If you had a lesser host coming in to have all these recurring characters, it wouldn't have worked as well. So I think for what the material he was given, this is a pretty good show.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good episode. His final episode, 1999, like he did a cameo during Charlie Day's monologue in 2011, but he's been largely absent and hopefully not forgotten, but maybe some younger SNL fans don't quite understand the power of Danny DeVito on SNL. I know you're not personal friends with Danny DeVito that I know of, but do you have any working theories maybe as to why like Danny hasn't come back to host in 25 years now?
And it's been a recurring question for a lot of hosts. And the host countdown that we've talked about, he came in 50 in the fans poll. And every week, John Schneider and I have moved him up. And almost every week, the people who were on with us were like, I got to go back and watch those Danny DeVito episodes because you guys are really high on him. He was number one on both of our lists until way, way into the countdown. And I'll tell you, Thomas, I'm breaking news here, although this will air after our reveals. But he's 17 all time for me as far as hosts. He is just amazing. It's hard to say why somebody doesn't come back. And we've seen this with modern people like John Hamm, Justin Timberlake. But why did he stop? If he had just hosted, and again, in the zeitgeist, on a show, a very popular show for the last 18 years, is it an age thing? You can't imagine that SNL hasn't asked him.
Yeah.
How is this possible? How is it possible that we haven't at least seen him in a bigger cameo besides that Charlie Day episode? in all of these years. It's been 25 years. He is the forgotten member of the recurring 90s hosts. I mean,
Yeah.
you had all-time classics with Hanks, Baldwin, Goodman, Steve Martin, and Danny, and I think people do forget that because all of them, in one form or another, have come back this millennium. Not asking a lot. Walken hasn't really been back since '08, but like he's been there more recently. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer because he clearly still knows how to be funny, and you really hope that we see him in some form on SNL.
Yeah, as is often the case, the boring answer is probably the correct answer in that he just doesn't want to. when SNL fans say like, why haven't they got this person to host or that person? The boring, probably correct answer is that person just said no. They just didn't want to. So I mean, that's probably the case here.
I mean, we dive deep into this a lot with people, with hosts, and it may be, the diminishing returns that we often see with somebody. We talked about these amazing episodes in season 13 and 14. He comes back in 18. He's still got a lot of great stuff. 25, not as great, and through no fault of his own. But is it something where you're like, I'm not going to tarnish my reputation? It's almost like the aging quarterback who's like, I'm not going to play one more year just to get a couple stats under the belt. I want my reputation to be as good as it is right now. So is that something that factors into Danny and maybe some others too?
Yeah, it could be. So we would love to have Danny back. We just started season 50, so it'd be wonderful if Danny returned. We'd be shocked. I'd be a little shocked if he did. Maybe not at the 50th celebration in February, but I don't know, be a pleasant surprise. So Bill, now's the time. You're talking to voters, fans, the folks at the water cooler. Why should they appreciate Danny's work as an SNL host?
Well, there's so many good reasons, much of which we've talked about over the last 90 minutes. He covers multiple eras. We've seen him work with people all the way back to 1982. He always elevates his game. There's something about a Danny DeVito episode that is special. And he's only the 8th person to join the Five Timers Club. You think about that today, it's almost, again, going back to the sports metaphor, things that get watered down over the course of time. And they're handing out Five Timers jackets to everyone these days. I'm looking at you, Woody and Jonah. But yeah, I mean, he got his Five Timers jacket before Baldwin, before Goodman, before Bill Murray, before Walken. So he was established in the show before most of these people were. And the fact that we haven't had him back should not be held against him because his 6 episodes still hold up to this day. Some of them over 40 years ago were made, and they're still very funny. There's still something to see about Danny DeVito at every turn. Just to see him again would be fantastic. If you see him on Always Sunny on a weekly basis, you know that he could still do something like this. He elevates that show. He elevated SNL.
So there's that. Very interesting retrospective of the CV of Mr. DeVito that we were just taken on. And I learned a lot between Matt and between Bill and Thomas. There's a lot on the plate here, folks. And as you pick up the pen and start to think about your ballot and how you are going to vote, maybe go back and watch some of these episodes that Bill and Thomas were talking about. He was a bona fide movie star. And I mean, had he not locked himself down into a sitcom right now, I'm sure he would still be doing film. So there's that. But don't take my word for it. As always, we are going to listen to a sketch from the Danny DeVito oeuvre, and you can judge for yourself. This is a reoccurring sketch that it's Delicious Dish. It's a reoccurring sketch, and DeVito shows up on it, and it's sort of a reinvention of the sketch. they really push it to a different place, and DeVito stays with them the entire time. So let's give this a listen right now. It's Delicious Dish with Danny DeVito.
Hello, I'm Margaret Jo McCullen.
And I'm Terry Rialto. It's June 16th of the year 2000, and you're listening to The Delicious Dish on National Public Radio.
Wow, Terry, it's hard to believe we're already 6 months into the year 2000.
Or as we like to call it, the hellish aftermath of the Y2K catastrophe.
It's neat, though. It's fun.
Fun.
It's pretty fun for... It's kind of a catastrophe, but it's good times. Yeah.
Good times.
So, Terry, we've got another great show for anyone who might still be alive out there.
Which is doubtful.
It seems like only yesterday that New Year's came in with a bang. And then another louder bang. Really loud bang.
It sure was. It was Jesus knocking at the door.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was a roving sex gang.
Anyway, we really have a corker of a show for you tonight. We're joined by a good friend and a familiar face, since he's been our guest every day for the past 6 months.
He's the author of an exciting new book you can find in burned out and looted bookstores everywhere. It's called Sumptuous Delights. Wow. Please welcome Chef Willie Boucher.
Hi, Willie. Nice to see you.
Thanks for joining us, Willie.
Hi, Terry. Hi, Margaret Jo.
It's great to see you again, Willie.
It's really a pleasure for me to be back here in my 167th consecutive show.
It's our pleasure. It's nice having you.
So, Willie, this is an exciting time to be cooking and an exciting time of year as the sights and sounds of the season turn our thoughts to avoiding starvation.
That's right. And avoiding starvation means wonderful culinary treats we can enjoy as we cower from the Aryan blood armies and packs of wild dogs who control the night.
It's neat.
It's fun.
It is fun. It's a nice diversion. Yeah.
It's good times.
Yeah, it is. Now, Willie, as our listeners know, when civilization began to collapse, Terry and I had stockpiled half a jar of non-dairy creamer, some Sweet and Low, and a ficus plant. I guess we should have thought that through a little better. Anyway, now that provisions are gone, we've had to improvise, and Willie's been a real miracle worker.
Well, thank you, Margaret Jo.
You're welcome.
It's amazing what desperation can make you do.
Yeah, like the night that I spent with those bikers in exchange for that packet of ketchup.
Willie, I understand you have a special treat for us today. I hope you're going to read to us from your book.
Well, I'd like to, but if you recall, we ate all the pages last week.
They were delicious. If you chewed them long enough, they tasted like juicy fruit.
Did you say Jesus?
No, juicy fruit.
Anyway, today we once again explore some simple dishes you can make in your own things that are lying around your own radio station. I like this. It's creamy New England clam chowder.
Wow.
Made out of whiteout. And some dice I found. And you heat it in the microwave for 2 minutes, and then you season it with some imaginary pepper.
Ooh, I hope I don't sneeze.
And as you can see here, I've served up a side dish here with some pan-seared Dristan tablets. They're very good. Take a couple myself. Bon appetit.
Wow, Terry. Smell those delicious fumes. I can hear my ears ringing already.
Neat.
This is good. This is good. That's nice.
It's not soup.
No, it's white out.
Good.
Wow.
Good tip.
Kill me.
Anyway, that's all the time we have. All Things Considered would be up next, but the All Things Considered guy starved to death 4 months ago.
So, all things considered, he's not doing too well.
Oh, God.
You've been making that joke for 4 months.
We'll join you again tomorrow when our guests will be...
Me. Willie Boucher.
And our topic will be what to serve if you receive an unexpected visit from the Water Militia.
I really wish we'd thought to buy a gun.
If we had a gun, I'd eat it.
That actually wouldn't be that bad.
That would be delicious.
Oh, that's very good. You know, that's very good. When you consider how weathered that sketch is at this point. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and DeVito helped make it so. As always, make sure to tune in to the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. That is every Thursday, provided I don't have technical difficulties, that is. We will be discussing this episode and the previous Saturday Night Live episode as well. So tune into that for sure. I can also tell you that next week we are going to be covering writer Alan Zweibel, and we are going to be joined by Gary Seath. Once again, the returning Gary Seath. So there's that. Now that's what I've got for you. So if you would do me a favor and on the way out, as you walk past the Weekend Update exhibit, turn out the lights because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNLHOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.